I said, okay, let's rate them. Rate your kids how you think they are at specialists and how they are with you. I think there's a bit of denial. We had stars, and we coloured-coded the stars for areas, and I know what sort of behaviours I was seeing, and we had teachers putting their stars right up the great end. I'm thinking, how could this be? When I go in, they're throwing things at each other, and the chairs are upended, and the cricket bats are hurled around kids' heads. So that was very interesting. So we had to look at the specific behaviours that we are seeing, and it started to slowly come out that the behaviours that we're seeing are the things that are unacceptable. We unpacked our rights with each other, we shared all those things, and we looked at some of the readings from Ray's book, and we got into groups and talked about the types of things that we started to develop about what is real, what is the things we mean when we're talking about behaviour at Coolaroo South, and we started to build up some principles about behaviour management for us. Because we were seeing behaviours that we felt were unacceptable in the yard and in some classrooms, we developed a draft of a process for managing the misbehaviours to trial. And it looks a bit like this. It doesn't really look like this because it's in portrait form, so it actually looks a bit better. It started out as a 6-step process of things to follow that then got melded into a 3-step process with sort of 3 areas. Step 1 being about the non-verbals and the verbals and reminding kids about what their impact is making. So many kids, that's all they need. They go back to their behaviour and it's fantastic. That's what you want. You've got to assume that that's what they're going to be first. And we've got to talk to teachers about that. Assume that everybody's an A and that might work. If it doesn't, then it moves on and it escalates, and it's usually very quickly. Stage 2 talks about reminding. I've reminded you about that. You're not letting us learn. Do you want to make a choice about where you go? Can you not stay? And if you can't, moving on to step 3, which is the exits, the internal exits. We're trying to get staff to really think about internal exits first, some opportunity where the child's removed from the group but not away, an opportunity to come back if that's applicable, and then the final step, of course, is the exit. So we have a bit of a process. Teachers really wanted something that they all felt they could do because everything was a bit ad hoc. Doesn't come up very well on there. Visual clues started to come up all around. I think the last presentation was talked a little bit about this. That in the prep grades particularly, and this was beginning to become more and more into the 1-2 area and the 3-4 area, about what we expect when kids first come to school. It's those things about what we expect, the systems that help them learn, to put things away, to know what to do at the beginning of the day, when to sit down, when to be with the group, when it's okay to talk. They started to pop up around the school, which was good. This is a very interesting one in a prep room. Every little prep child has their face stuck to a little body, and they've got the rights train above it, which I don't have a picture of, and the kids get to go and put little stars on themselves when they're behaving really well, and when they get enough stars, they get to do something that they love to do, which is usually sit and play with someone and get out some toys. And the other side of the coin, they go and put little things up about warnings, and they have to put their name on something, and it reminds them that they've had a warning and they need to think about it before they go to the naughty chair or what it might be in that room. Okay, now since I guess those things are growing out of our curriculum day, we've tried to agenda some time into staff meetings regularly, and it's a challenge because we're all part of the AIZ, and I've got the literacy person doing this to me and I have to do this, and I'm the numeracy person and I'm trying to push that as well, and trying to keep it on the agenda of our process. We've had a number of discussions, so we try and just put a little thing on the agenda every now and then. Never is enough time, but we had a discussion. Our next one was really about positive behaviours. How do we encourage them? So I sort of said to staff, okay, I want you to get into pairs. How do you encourage this positive behaviour we talk about? We all know what it looks like and what we want. How do you do that in your class? Talk to somebody and then feed them all back in. And these are the sorts of things we got in, and I grouped some of them. People talked about point systems, rewards and privileges. They talked about responsibilities and getting kids to be monitors, the free time and the choice. Then they started to talk about praise and teamwork and discussion at the beginning and the end of the day, building self-image, showing an interest in their lives. My eyes started to open up, thinking, oh, thank goodness. Finally, somebody said something about curriculum. And I was a bit shocked that it took so long to get down to that. Someone said, oh, it was the way you framed the question, Jen. I said, no, I don't think it was. I think it was more. That's what we think. If I've asked you the question about behaviour, we're thinking about what do we do outside or when we see the behaviour to get them to behave well. But the curriculum is just such an important one. And I know Ray saw a fair bit of that when he came around. Since then, we've had a follow-up session about the process and how it worked, the one that I showed you before that didn't come up all that well. This was really vibrant because it turned to a bit of, you're not doing your job. I'm afraid, we've got a lot of differences between what people are doing, and it became about, well, they're not managing the process. And I guess that was to be expected. When you put something new into place, it takes a while for us to unpack how it really works. So we looked at all our concerns, we wrote up all the positive things that were happening about the process, and they were things like, we've got a common language to use, we know we've got the steps, we've got the things around the school, we know we can use the posters and things. So the positive things were happening like that. Another one was about having that shared grade of where you exit your child to. A couple of teachers said, that's working really well for me, and we're working well together. That's when the discussion started, because someone said, well, it's not working for me because I get all the kids in my room. So we had to work out, well, how is this going to be fair? So the concerns started to raise their heads, and that's given us really our schedule for the next lot of staff meetings of working through those. We wrote a little guidelines document about, well, how does the process work? So I made sure that everyone had a partner grade that they could go to if that wasn't clear to them and they were getting them from everywhere. We talked about it's 10 minutes in and they're out again. No, it's not the partner grade's teacher's responsibility to berate the child and point at them and ask them what they've done. And that was happening. So no, we don't do those things. It's time for them to sit there and feel quiet and then go back. And things like help your class deal with that when when a guest is coming in from another classroom. Teachers would say, oh, but my kids, they're rubbernecking and they don't get on with their work and it's distracting. Well, that's our job, to talk to our grade. How do we get our grade on side about that? And to say, oh, here comes somebody, or well, we're going on with our work. We can teach kids to do that, and teachers are beginning to do that with each other. And I have invited people, say, invite me in and we'll do that together. It shouldn't be a difficult thing. So as I just said, the list of concerns is going to keep us busy for ages, and we're trying to agenda them slowly. And the guidelines has really worked. That went in 2 weeks ago, and the process seems to be a lot clearer to people. This week, we unpacked what to say and do when sending or receiving a student, a little bit what I was talking about. We talked about, and this is where our biggest challenge is, what are we recording? Who are we exiting? And what about in the specialist classes? What is the data now telling us? Our data really tells us nothing true, and that's a bit of the problem at the moment, because there was too much denial and kids weren't being exited. Behaviour was escalating in the classroom, so the exits we were, I guess, suffering the other side of the coin. They're not being exited, but the room's in chaos. So I think what we've got to do is we've really got to talk to our teachers to get that consistency of what they expect. Once the exits start, and now they're starting, we're going to get some more data that will really tell us about whether we're going to be able to improve. We then developed a behaviour process for the yard, a little bit like the last document, because teachers really said, well, what do I do in the yard? Well, it's the same. You do the reminders, the words about the rights, you do the reminders, then you might have an internal exit in the yard on the seat. If it gets really bad, the external exit, of course, is back into the school. Very specific things of needs that they had. Okay, where to now? Well, we've had some readings we've put out to staff, and we want to discuss how we follow up with exited students, what to say to those Cs. I think Ray in his book's got a 9-step process, and teachers first looked at that and thought, oh my God, it's going to take me an hour every time I exit a student. But in reality, it doesn't. We all know that. Virtually steps 1 to 5 are like, hello, thanks for coming and helping me with this problem. Sit down. And it's what you say next. So some modelling is going to happen and some coaching with that, and even some peer observation in a different capacity outside the classroom, but in the withdrawal room, watching each other.